recording. Welcome to Best Practices During a Transaction. So we're going to go over today communication, etiquette, negotiations, and expectations during a transaction. My name is Toni Benton. I have been with Keller Williams since 2019, in real estate since the end of 2014. I love teaching. It's one of my favorite things to do, as everyone probably knows by now, because I talk about it all the time. I have 3 kids, a fantastic supportive husband, and a rescue dog named Cecil, who just really lights up our lives. I am a top producer in the office, and I welcome any questions, anytime, any place, anywhere. Please reach out and ask questions and let me know if I can help you, because that's what my passion is. All right. Also, please don't write questions in the chat, because I like to walk around and I can't read your questions. So unmute yourselves, ask your questions, and let me know right away, so that way we can answer them. If it's a very detailed question, we're going to put it in the parking lot at the bottom here, or somewhere on our little form, and answer it at the end so we don't eat up other people's times. Any questions to start? Nothing? Perfect. Okay. So my biggest thing that I always like to talk about, be proactive and not reactive, right? That's a big, big deal when we're talking about our transactions. We have to be forward thinking in everything that we do. So it goes without saying, we want to answer our phone calls and respond to texts and emails immediately. And if there's a time frame that you don't answer your phone, set that expectation in the beginning, right? It's super easy. If you don't answer during specific times after 7, you could also have an auto reminder on your email after 7 o'clock at night that you've set up. If you don't know how to do that, I know how to do it on an Apple iPhone, but I don't know how to do it on Android. So what I always suggest is create informational materials that help your client, because it helps reduce their anxiety. And information materials could include what the first steps in a transaction are, right? How about what we're going to do after the escrow deposit? Or here's where you're going to find the legitimate phone number for a title company so we can help prevent wire fraud. There's all kinds of things that we can do to provide information to the client. I don't know if you've used commands, but during each step of the transaction that you can actually navigate on your own, you're able to put checklists. And as you complete that part of the transaction, it will automatically send an update once you slide the little toggle over in command. And you can set up that update to whatever you want, right? And we'll go over some examples as we go through the class. So just be aware of command. If you don't know, set up an appointment with Andrew Hicks or Ryan Yarborough. They're our tech guys. So you can set it up to whatever you need it to be. Okay. Be prepared. Know your scripts. This is an easy one. I think that also goes without saying, but you should be role playing and script practicing so that you have an idea of what it is you're going to use as a rebuttal or ways to address client concerns. We get the question all the time right now, should I buy in this market? Well, we should be the market expert. I don't know, should you? Right? In this current market, are you going to try to sell in a year or 2? Or are you going to stay for the long haul? Right? So that's part of our buyer interview process. We're digging deeper to find out what their motives are for their purchase. Check in with clients consistently. So I don't mean just your sellers, but I also mean your buyers. So how many people, just unmute yourselves if you're not in the classroom, just say I do. If you actually reach out to your buyers either daily or every other day if you have them on an MLS drip. How many people are doing that? Right?
They're shopping.
See, if they're shopping, right? Doesn't that set a higher level of service? Even if you have them set up on a smart plan through command, right? They have Twilio, and if you don't know what Twilio is, it's a text message service. It comes from a different number, but what I've done on my contact card that I text all of my clients now is I have my Twilio number so that when that does show up as a text, it's coming up under my name, even though it's not my cell phone number. So that's another service. Hi, Marlon. Good. How are you? Good. I'm sorry I'm late. That's okay. I'm happy you're here. So it's a service that you can set up as a smart plan. You can also set up reminders to call clients, right? So if you haven't done smart plans, it is the easy button for your transactions. And we are personally working on those in our office, or we're getting ready to, but it's something that we're just really excited about because it's so easy. Okay, if you're not checking in with your sellers, at least weekly with feedback from showings, which you can do very easily on showing time. I don't know if you know that little secret, but you can do a homeowner report that gives all the feedback. On Mondays and Tuesdays, our office contacts those agents that have not provided feedback. So we'll send them a text, we may phone call them, because we want to provide as much information to sellers as we can. Now, in this market, it may not be necessary, but we do see some unrealistic sellers that are asking for the sun, moon, and stars, right? So those properties are sitting a little bit longer until they make an adjustment. You still have to ask your client, how often do you want me to contact you and reach out and provide updates? And again, in command, you can provide the checklist updates by simply moving the toggle left to right, showing that that part of the transaction has been completed. It's just staying in front of them and communication. That's what clients crave, what they want, right? Okay. Yes, Kevin.
So just having Todd ignite the brain question with regards to how you keep in contact with buyers that are actively looking for properties and you're showing them, but nothing is coming up that meets their criteria within the criteria.
So you're asking
how often do you stay in front of them?
Well, you should be, if you are not sending something to them that day, you should be calling them saying, you know what, I've looked.
So daily, you're saying daily.
I'm saying daily. In this market right now, if you have a buyer and there's nothing meeting their criteria, you might want to change the criteria, right? And
reevaluate.
Yeah, you have to reevaluate. Are your buyers unrealistic? Maybe. I think we have a lot of people that are coming to Florida thinking they can still get a 3-bedroom, 2-bath with a pool for $250,000. That's not reality anymore. It's just not. So, you have to set those expectations early with the buyer. And we'll get into that a little bit more when we're talking about consultations. Okay. Don't be tempted to skip steps. It's easy to fall into that trap as you get busier, right? When we become new agents and we have that first couple of transactions, we are on top of it, or at least on top of it as much as we know how to be. But there are some things that you just don't know what you don't know, right? So I know when I was a new agent, I didn't know that a survey had a due date. So I wasn't following up on it. And how many times do we get to the closing table and they're just looking at the survey for the first time? A lot. And title companies and lenders, by the way, and I'll say it 1,000 times, they are not a party to the contract. They're not signing that contract, right? When we have to provide on a finance transaction the loan approval in writing, it doesn't say the lender provides that. They're not a party to the contract. It just says that the buyer has to provide it in writing. So even if it's on a little yellow sticky note that says, yep, I'm approved, that's basically the gist of it. Not that I'm suggesting that, it's suggested to get it from the lender, right? So, and by the way, now that I'm on that soapbox, when the buyer and seller signs the contract, it is allowing you as an agent on either side of the transaction to reach out to that lender and get updates. Now, some lenders may say, oh, we need them to sign a separate form. I'm sorry, they've signed it. It's already on this contract. So I won't go too deep into the contract. You all know how I get a little bit passionate about that. So again, check in with your clients regularly. Buyers that are set up on an MLS strip and sellers looking to sell property. I did not type that one correctly, sorry. Be organized. So when we have a new transaction, buyer or seller, we actually have created in our office a template so that we know, even if there are tasks that may not apply to that specific transaction, every single possible task that we could think of is on there, and we just delete the ones that are not necessary, right? Again, these are things that you can also set up in Command. So you don't have to pay for a separate CRM system in order to accomplish this. So who can give me ideas on a buyer side of the transaction, what your tasks should be?
Recording in progress.
We're recording, clearly. Anyone jump in, unmute yourselves. Tell me what your tasks are on your transaction. Any thoughts? We're on the buyer side. Jump on in anytime.
Inspection days, maybe?
Inspection dates, right? Getting them set up quickly so that we don't miss those deadlines and we're allowing enough time for a professional in an area should there be a problem that comes up, right? Escrow deposits, appraisals, right?
Title paperwork.
Title paperwork, municipal lien searches, sometimes condos. The property manager will try not to do the municipal lien search because, oh, the association pays for the water bill. They still have to do it. I've had this fight a couple of times. They still have to do it. And one time they actually did find a problem. So you don't want to have your buyers inherit these messes. And they don't know what they don't know. It's our job to guide them. Insurance, that can hold up a closing. We know this. And that's one of the first things they should be doing. Right? That's just out the gate. Start getting your insurance quotes. Come on, Jason.
Very true. Sorry.
Jason's here from Florida Best Quote, and he's saying, very true. You want to add anything to that?
About the need for insurance?
About getting it done quickly, too.
Yeah, well, especially if there's inspections that are due, those need to be done as quickly as humanly possible.
Right. What's the turnaround time from quote to getting it to the lender right now?
It depends on the company completely. You know, if we have to go through citizens, that's going to take the longest amount of time because they have to review everything. Inspections get reviewed up front before anything can be bound. Everything has to be perfect with them. They require more paperwork than any other company as well. If it's just a quote with another company that's pretty simple, inspections are fine, you can get that quoted and bound in a day or two. So
But once it's found, it then goes to the underwriter. And we don't have control over that.
Hey, Tony, question for you.
Yes.
For purposes of anybody who's on here, for newer agents as well. From the point of the time you receive your under contract, how soon should you be advising your client to reach out to insurance?
Day one.
Day one.
Yeah, once we have a signed agreement, they need to be doing that day one. Because what if it knocks them out of affordability for the loan?
Flood insurance can do that, especially now with the way they changed the way they rate
Yeah,
homes, so.
right.
And the price increase too.
Price increases, we need to get all this stuff up front very quickly. We need to have all of this. So, okay, I say this all the time. And I always tell clients, I want to hold your hand. I love to hold your hand. But sometimes I can't hold your hand and do something for you, such as sinkholes, crime maps, flood maps, right? But I can be the source that provides the source. I just can't be the direct source, right? And it's true. And I let my clients know it really hurts me to not be able to do this for you. But if I tell you the neighbor doesn't have a sinkhole and they do, and you base your decision off of that because sinkholes are important to you, well, who's at fault?
Toni, do you recommend that we just give them the source to call them and to call about the sinkhole?
So remember when I was saying in the beginning, and you might have not been here yet, but I said create documents to help your clients, to help alleviate anxiety and stress, right? And give it to them. You can give it as part of your buyer consult, or you can give it once they sign the buyer brokerage agreement, right? And show your value. Let me show you where to find the crime maps and the flood maps. How do you contact Pinellas County Utilities? How do we know where the sinkholes are? How do you search for subsidence on every property appraiser's website? Because there is a way to do that on every property appraiser's website. My suggestion, before you go putting forms out there, have the broker look at it, or you could pay the attorney for our brokerage, right, at Bush Ross, and have them look it over since they do represent this brokerage, right? So make sure you have a second set of eyes on it, either from leadership or the attorney, to make sure that you're not putting crazy stuff out there or misinformation. Right?
That'll bite you too.
It can hurt you. It can hurt you. So, get it in writing. So we're going to go over this in quite a bit of detail, and I think you're going to be a little bit shocked about things that you're probably doing or other agents are doing that we should have in writing. Get it in writing. Who can give me examples or share some things that we should be getting in writing from the buyer or seller? Any thoughts?
Entire conversations.
Well, yeah, if you're on the phone or if you're always in your car like I am and doing Zoom calls or telephone calls with your client, we should be sending a follow-up email, or at the very least, and not that this is suggested unless you can create a PDF copy of it, but a text message, something, right? Hey, I know that we just talked about the sinkholes in the area, and I sent you the link to search for those for Pinellas County. Let me know if you have any questions. Here's the link, right? I did not say I was searching for sinkholes for you, right? Fair housing. If someone insists on sending an email to the seller as a buyer, or putting something in writing, consider fair housing. Make sure that you have in writing that you have addressed with them fair housing issues that could arise. Okay? Any questions on fair housing issues that could arise due to a love letter or love video from buyer to seller? So other things, any suggestions or thoughts on other things we should be getting in writing? There's a lot. Yes, Kevin.
So you mentioned texting. So for the purposes of anybody who's using command, you can do follow-up texting in command. And
Yes.
it will record it on their timeline.
You see that? Follow-up texting in command. Actually, it will hijack your emails too. Any emails that you're sending, it will automatically transfer from your email service provider to command if you set it up that way.
And it'll all be buried in the timeline so you have documentation.
Yeah. But if you are using text messages, maybe you're working with a millennial type client, make sure you can transfer those text messages to PDF format and keep it somewhere in a file, right? Because we all know technology, things happen. Back up your emails. If you're not putting it all in command, back them up to a PDF and transfer it. So we're going to go into more information about what we need to get in writing. Don't be surprised. Did you know that we have to put in writing why a buyer is buying? Or why a seller is selling. Hey, why are they moving here to Florida? Well, it can impact the negotiation position of your buyer or seller. If they know they have to move because of a job transfer, or they have to sell maybe because of divorce, they may know that there's some desperation there and they can play on that. But as long as your client is okay with that, fine, but get it in writing from them. Have a little checklist at your consultation that they sign that says, yes, you can disclose why I'm moving. Here's the reason you can disclose. Okay. You want to get that in writing. Oh, and by the way, the contract type. The buyer and the seller both have a choice of what contract to use. If you notice, in a lot of realtor remarks, it says as is contract. Do you have something in writing that says the seller chose that? Did you even review the differences between the standard and the as is contract to give them that option? That's going to be a really big deal. And again, you guys know my love for the contracts. The standard contract, if I have a house that meets everything a standard contract protects the seller for, I'm going for it because it gives the buyer less outs. How about showing instructions? I have a whole sheet that goes over showing instructions that the seller signs. You want me to put on there that they lock all doors and turn off lights? Do you want the lights on? Do you not want them to touch the cabinets because of COVID? Do they have to wear a mask? What times do you not want your property shown? All of that should be in writing. Oh, and your pet names. By the way, I told you to remove that pet because of liability, yet you chose not to and it bit a child, right? These are things that we want in writing. Has anyone thought of any of this? Did you know any of this? How about those times when we send the contract to the lender or the title company and we copy the client on it, or we send an email with the client's contact information? Did you get permission to share their information? If not, you should be, right? These are things to think about because we have to protect the client's information at all times. Now, I can tell you on an Apple or a Mac product how to send a secured document through email. I can't tell you on an Android or PC, but we should know this and we should be guiding our clients to do that. Hey, you sending information to your lender, even though the lender should be telling them this, you should probably send it through a secured email and giving them a password to open that document. Right? If you don't know how to do it, at least tell them to figure it out. It is our job to help protect their information. So what we do in our office, when we have to send something to the title company, we either get written permission or we have our ways to make sure that the buyer understands who the title company is, their correct phone number because of wire fraud, and that they should be reaching out, which they should do anyways, because the title company wants information from them as well, right? But get it in writing before you start sharing information. We have a fiduciary relationship most of the time as a single agent. So if you're not quite sure what that means, my huge suggestion is to research it or take the class. Actually, Nikki, she teaches a good class, Nikki Baldini. So anything else that you might have put into practice or getting it in writing that I didn't mention today? Anyone? Any aha moments that you'd like to share? Don't be scared, y'all. I like feedback.
Should we create an addendum to make them aware of the things that we're going to be doing, that what they can sign it?
Make it a checklist. Yes, you can share my information with the title company. Here's the information I want you to use. Yes, this is the contract that we've chosen as a seller. Yes, please provide the information as an executed contract to the lender. But if you're not sending it through a secured portal, you should be. If you're using Gmail, Hotmail, any other mail that's not got some type of secure sending features that are over the top, you're not doing any services to your client. Gmail and Hotmail, they're hacked quite often. Educate your clients. Don't go into an email and hit unsubscribe. That's how they get into their email. If you want to unsubscribe, go directly to the website. This is how hackers get in. Right? Things to think about. We should be really researching. This is what I do when I can't sleep most nights. I'm just up looking at things and Googling thoughts that come into my head and what ifs. So I have all kinds of great information that I just love to share. Manage the transaction. Again, organize your daily tasks. Kelly, are you online with us? Kelly Meyer.
I'm here.
Kelly, can you give some examples of tasks that we have on a new seller file?
On a new seller file that they, well, we get the package together.
Can you guys hear
Get the
Kelly?
information to them.
Talk louder, Kelly.
Okay.
Hold
A
on,
new
Kelly.
seller. Well, we get the listing paperwork to them. Add them to our contacts list, all of many contact lists or
So we're
database, I should
adding
say.
the client to our contact list, right? So that's y'all
We'll
hear
be taking photos, entering the information, make sure they prove the copy and the photos. Get them active in the MLS, do weekly listing update reports for feedback until we get under contract.
right? Now, if we have the seller side of the transaction, we're also following up on the buyer side as if it was our own buyer. Why do you think we're doing that?
You can always depend on the other agent to do their.
Yeah, you might get ghosted by a lender, by an agent.
Agents.
That happens all the time. And sometimes it's things that can be fixed, but if you're not on top of it, it's too late. So our timelines, our tasks look very similar on the buyer and seller side. I'm following up on the survey, even if I have the listing. I'm following up on title commitment. I'm following up on the buyer's insurance because I don't want it to delay anything, right? What happened? Dun, dun, dun. Keep going, manage there. So how many people, just say I do, how many people actually go over the contract terms and the listing agreement? I do. I'm not interpreting the contract, but I'm breaking down the terms of it, right? I can tell you, I've spoken to a lot of agents, including mega agents, who do not do that. They just sign or they just send the document and have them sign it.
So
Yes,
one
Kevin.
thing I will add to that, depending upon the client that you're working with, whether they're IIDC, whatever.
So
disc
based
fund,
on the disc
based on
profile,
the disc, if they're the high D, they're just gonna get an email and say, read over, you have questions, we'll talk. That's what they want.
Yeah.
Right, but then there's the other people who want to go over the minutiae detail line by line with you. You would do that too.
Right.
So it's gonna be, depending upon the client, ultimately how you behave.
yeah. So even if I do have that high D, I'm saying, let's go over the terms real
Yeah.
quick. Because what if I made a mistake? I'm human. I'm not perfect. I'm far from it. I'm learning every day. But if I'm not going over that contract and reviewing those terms, what if I put 3-day inspection, but they really need 5? Right? Which brings me to the other point. We are actually contacting the inspector before we put those small inspection periods on there to make sure they can get there by that time, right? And then we're not setting up the appointments and everything else. We're letting the client know, here's the list of inspectors that I have, and this is when they can get there. What do you want to do and who do you want to use? My suggestion is to call each inspector and find out which one you think you can work with and what products and services they offer. Oh, by the way, you have that 1960s, 50s, or 70s house, I would suggest getting a plumber out there and inspecting the lines. Right? We have to guide them. I have a whole list of different inspections that a client can do. Plumbing, radon, mold, you name it. There's like 15 different inspections, lead-based paint. So make sure you're giving them the information. You have to inform them. And by the way, we do have radon in Florida. Not just Kentucky or northern states. We have it here. When you're going over the listing agreement, explain that as well. Sometimes, depending on the client and their disc profile, I'll send them the differences between the as-is contract and the standard before I even meet with them. I highlight the differences, which are mainly paragraph 9 and 12, and I have them read it so that when we get there, we can actually have an educated conversation and they know what I'm talking about, right? And we can get through it quicker. We've given them a little bit of homework. Drop off the disclosures, but bring a spare copy with you to the appointment in case they make mistakes. Or mail the disclosures, or email them, right? Explain the meaning of the disclosures. We are not filling the disclosures out for anybody. We are not telling them what to write on the disclosures at all. We can answer what policy plumbing is, but we're not writing anything on these disclosures. It's not ours to disclose, but I will tell you, I just spoke to a good friend of mine who's a real estate attorney yesterday. Because again, I'm super nerdy and I love to hear case law. Love it. So during our conversation, hi, how's it going? You want Jake Yankarelli?
Hello.
Mega agent extraordinaire.
Aloha.
My neighbor. Right?
Loud neighbor.
We have fun though.
How we doing?
We have fun. So basically, guys, the whole conversation that you need to have with disclosures, don't fill them out. send it to them early, bring a spare copy if you're meeting in person, right? Check in constantly with the parties to the transaction. We kind of touched on this, but we're not just talking about buyer and seller. We're talking about lenders, title companies, inspectors. Because we want to know if there's a red flag, if there's a problem. The property management company, we want to check in with them. And please, whatever you do, do not go online and pull documents from other MLS listings. We don't know if they're accurate or correct or the most current. The seller has to provide those, and they have to now provide the HOA documents, not just condo. The documents that they need to provide is the budget, the most So if they don't have a budget as an association, I would be concerned and ask why, and I would get that in writing and provide it to the client. My suggestion would be for the client to probably contact an attorney to discuss why that's an issue.
Okay.
Right? I'm not going to tell them all the reasons why, because there could be reasons of case law that I don't know. Right? Hey, if you really want to move forward with this, you might want to assess the risk by talking to an attorney. Okay. I'm all about an attorney reviewing the contracts and everything. I wish we did it on every single transaction. I know people are like, oh, treason. But no, it's true. I really think we should. Really. Because I have them reach out, and yeah, it's a pain sometimes, but it's an angle I didn't think of. And I wish I had. Now, if we're looking at condo associations, who remembers what happened in South Florida at Champlain Towers? I do. I followed it. I've even looked at the architectural renderings of that property because I want to know why, how, I want to know more. So who's asking for just the 2022 budget that's been approved versus going back and asking for the last 5 years? Why would we do that? Why would we ask for prior budgets? Give me some reasons. Let me hear from my Zoomers too. I miss you guys. You're awfully quiet out there.
We want to make sure there's enough reserves to maintain the property.
Yeah. What do their reserves look like? Are they partially funded or fully funded? Because a lot of associations before Champlain Towers was moving towards being partially funded. Meaning you're going to get an assessment when there's a new roof needed, or an elevator, or painting, or landscaping, or there's something wrong with the pool pump, or the playground equipment's outdated. Right? So I want to know the health of this association so that the client can make an informed decision. It is not required that the seller provide past years. So if it is something that has to be purchased, I would have in writing to the buyer that it is highly suggested that you purchase these. I want to know how many assessments they've charged in the past. I want to have an understanding of how often they've increased their dues and what the repairs have been in the past. Did they repair that elevator? How old is the roof? I want to know this information. But we also need the articles of incorporation, the bylaws, the rules and regulations, the declarations, and the questions and answers if they're available. They owe those to us. Make sure on your disclosure, if you have the buyer, that you are marking that you are requesting that information. And make sure that when you get all of the information, that's when the 3-day period starts. So keep a list of each document that is required by the seller and cross it off as you receive it and send a reminder to the listing agent that you still need these documents. Because that 3-day period that the client has to review those documents doesn't start until they receive them all. So once they receive them, that's when they'll sign a receipt of condo docs. Yeah. Does everyone know that? Everyone's all clear on that one? Perfect. How many people here have a timeline? I do. Who has a timeline? What do you think is on this timeline?
I have a letter that I send out to the buyer that has every due date in the contract.
Every due date on the contract. Every due
And
date.
I copy the lender, and I also send a copy of the title and a copy to the listing agent.
So the very first thing that I have on that is a reminder of the type of contract. Is it an as-is or a standard contract? Just a reminder, folks, an as-is contract does not require the seller to do any repairs. So just be mindful of that. The second thing I have on there is the effective date. The effective date of the contract. Why do I have that? Because sometimes we may not change that date on the bottom of page 1, that response date. And if it's signed after the response date, how do we know? And when is the effective date? Who can tell me when the effective date of a contract begins?
Sign, when the contract is all signed.
And so it's the last date of the signature and or initial. So wet signing, you should be dating your initials. But it's also when it's been delivered. That's when the effective date starts.
Can you give me an example of when that would be different?
So an example of when this would be different would be, let's say the client signs at 11 o'clock at night on Thursday. I get it Thursday night, but I'm sleeping. So I deliver it to the listing agent on Friday morning. The effective date starts Friday morning. Right? And that is day 0. The next day is day 1. The next day is day 2, right? Go ahead.
So how do you explain that to other agents nicely? Because I get it all the time.
I just highlight the contract. Hey, you might want to read this part of the contract, these lines. Oh, and by the way, this is what the highlighted bolded word delivered means. It's right here for you.
Because I was told Super Bowl weekend was holiday, so.
Holiday.
Yeah. I was like,
So the contract does now read, one of the changes on it was if a deadline ends on a weekend or observed holiday. So of course,
that's not an observed.
it's not
holiday.
observed, although it should probably be. Why not? But if you have 4th of July is on Sunday, but we're really observing it Monday. They've included that in the new contract as a holiday. It used to then divert till 5 the next business day, but that time deadline is no longer there. 5 o'clock, out. There's no 5 o'clock deadline anywhere on that contract unless it is written in specifically by somebody. So now it's 11:59 and 59 seconds at night. That is the deadline. Okay? So the timeline, other things that should be on it, when's the title commitment due? Your loan approval. What happens if we do not give loan approval to the seller in writing within that loan approval period? The seller can cancel the contract. How many days do they have to do that? 3 days. I would be a very upset buyer if you neglected as my agent to let me know that I had to put something in writing or cancel. And then in this market, that seller got a higher offer for cash and they can close in a week. His title commitment's already been pulled.
Tony,
Yes.
can you explain that a little bit better? When you say timelines in 5 days, 5 days from closing date, 5 days from effective date?
So we're talking about the loan approval.
Correct.
So in this example, the loan approval, let's just say you have a 45-day closing period. How many necklaces do I have on? Hold on. One too many. If you have a 45-day closing time frame and your loan approval is in 30 days, which please, by the way, check that. Don't leave any blanks on the contract. I'm going off on a little side tangent here. If you're closing in 25 days and you leave that open and it's defaulting to 30 days, you've now not had any requirement for loan approval. We want this at least 3 to 4 days, at least prior to closing. So check those numbers, it's your job. So basically, Karen, I think that was Karen, wasn't it? Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was.
Hi, Karen.
Hi.
So basically, if the loan approval is in 30 days, you have 30 days to provide that written loan approval. Remember, even if it's on that yellow Post-it note signed by the buyer, or if it's written by the lender, you have 30 days. If you don't provide that to the seller in writing within that 30-day time frame, the seller then has 3 days to cancel. So here's day 30, which ultimately then starts day 0 for the seller to cancel. The next day is day 1, the next day is day 2, following day is day 3. So let's just say loan approval was due on Monday. They have until Thursday as a seller to cancel if we did not provide that in writing. Are we as agents sending an email saying they're approved? Only if we have a document that we're attaching to that email from someone else besides us, lender or buyer. Those are the two people who should be providing loan approval. Again, it's not required that the lender provide it in writing. They're not a party to the contract, and the contract doesn't say it has to come from them. This has to come from the buyer. Also, in managing the contract, don't forget that if you have a $500,000 property, which is kind of common right now in this area, but you're only collecting an escrow deposit of $2,000, $3,000, less than 1%, and that buyer is like, walks away because they defaulted on the contract for whatever reason. If you don't think that that seller isn't going to be upset and they could possibly sue that they're not gonna pull you into it, then you're gravely mistaken. Because now the question will be, why didn't you have the buyer put a little more stake in this? You weren't looking out for the best interests of your client as a seller. So make sure you're collecting a high escrow deposit that's not going to encourage a buyer to just walk away easily, right, Jake?
Right. I thought closed or canceled the day of closing.
Because who cares if I lose $1,000? It's a lot of money, but in the big scheme of things,
They
it's
found another
nothing.
house. They don't care about $1,000.
They don't care.
True.
You have to look out for your clients in all angles and aspects, and it is not easy, especially when you're busy. When you start getting to that breaking point, get some leverage. Okay. So how do I work this, Kevin? Oh boy. Oh, here we go. Ooh, offers and counter offers. What? Move the mouse. Oh, look at this. Make sure you're preparing your clients for this possibility, especially in this market of offers and counter offers. I'm sure they already know, and I actually spoke to another agent, not in this office or brokerage, but one that I keep up with quite a bit, and we kind of bounce things off each other. But this particular agent said he actually told his buyer, you're probably going to make an offer on your first property, and you might go up 10,000 above ask or 20,000, and you're not going to get it. So the second offer, when you're serious now, you might have a chance at that one. They put in an offer of 71,000 above ask and did not get it. But you have to have that conversation. So, as we know, and I don't know if any of you use this form, but I'm going to go into it here. There is an actual form that's multiple offer disclosure. I think it's called a mod 1. If you really want to get geeky. Florida Realtors has put it out for us. There's one for the buyer and one for the seller. I know it's Florida Realtors put it out. It probably would be FAR, but it's called a mod -1 on the seller side.
Florida Realtors, then it's Chris.
It's not a Chris. It might be FAR then. Oh, but
That-
hey, Kelly,
Yes.
can you check and see on the bottom of the multiple offer disclosure for buyer or seller if it's a CRISP or FAR, please? And
Hold on just one moment.
So Kelly's gonna check that for us, but I'm pretty sure it's FAR then. I don't think it's a CRISP. But regardless, I still use it. I don't care if it's a CRISP. And I know they don't like mixing and mingling FAR and CRISP contract documents. But what I love about this document is it tells the seller what their options are in a multiple offer situation. So I'm giving it to them ahead of time in this market. Actually, I've always given it to them, but in this market, I really emphasize it. Because it says, hey, you can counter one offer and reject all the others. And oh, by the way, we are marking that little box, reject, at the end of the contract and sending it so that we don't get that question, did you present my offer? Because I had an agent harass me from another brokerage until I had to have the seller send an email saying, we are not accepting your offer and stop asking.
Toni,
Yes, ma'am.
it is not a CRISP or a FAR bar. It's a MODS-1 Florida Realtors form.
Yeah, Florida Realtors. So I don't know. I just know it's a disclosure they put out. The second option on the disclosure says you can counter more than one offer But you have to put in writing that this is not an acceptance. We're just trying to basically see who's gonna come back with the best response to our counter offer. And at that point, when we decide, then we will sign it and put it in writing. But you have to, if you are countering more than one offer, you have to let the people on the other side of the transaction know that. Or highest and best, best and final, whatever you want to call it, right? But every time buyer or seller makes a counter offer, it allows that person to get out of the contract because the old offer is no longer on the table. So you have to remind your clients, okay, we are countering for $2,000 or $5,000, and they can walk away. Is it worth losing the property over that amount? Remind them of that, okay? So make sure they understand this, that it's not confusing. Oh, and by the way, hold on. There's also a buyer form that lets the buyer know that there is a multiple offer situation occurring. If they're asking for best and final on that multiple offer disclosure form for the buyer, it lets them know what the due date is. So the seller completes it, they sign it, you send it to all the buyer's agents, and we're communicating with them, right? We're not those agents that have multiple offer situations and we're just so overwhelmed we're not answering our phones or text messages because we know that's happening. And it's irritating. It frustrates our clients, it stresses them out. It stresses out the agent on the other side who's looking to seek answers for their client. So one of the best practices that I put together for my transactions when a multiple offer situation occurs is, hey, we have a multiple offer situation, and it's in the realtor remarks in MLS. We've added the form to the MLS that lets you know here's when the highest and best is due. We're also putting it in the remarks. The seller will have a deadline typically by 5 o'clock Monday, and they will make a decision by 5 o'clock Tuesday. Because you know when you put a deadline of 5 o'clock Monday, you're getting calls at 5:05. So did they decide? Well, no, we just got all best and final in 5 minutes ago. Now I got to break it down, right? But we're going to get back into this in a little bit here, but the buyer's brokerage agreement. I've been burned a couple of times recently because I wasn't using one. And now I'm angry. Because in this market, your buyers have no loyalty. It's first come, first serve. Who can get you that property the fastest?
Two of those.
You had two. I've had a
And
couple
the single.
already. Yeah. So I am done wasting my time because every minute that I am writing an offer or showing you properties is a minute that I don't have with my kids or husband or my dog. Now I'm angry. But whose fault is it? I look in the mirror, it's my fault. So a good way, if you don't know how to present that buyer's brokerage agreement, hey, here's my single agent form to you. This is me showing you my obligations and duties to you as your agent. If you notice on there, it says loyalty. So I'm giving you my full loyalty. So I'm going to now have you sign this buyer's brokerage agreement so that I know that you're loyal to me. So every minute that I focus on you, I know that it's a minute well served, right? It's that easy. And agents who are new that are coming into the market and they use it from day one, never have a problem. It's rare. Established agents are the ones that have a problem. They're the ones who put up the biggest fight, like me, until you get burned just enough to make you mad. And now I'm mad. So now I'm using it. And if I have a client that chooses not to sign it, I have to question their loyalty and why. And is it worth it to me? Is it a $150,000 condo that I'm going to work just as hard for as a $1 million condo? But they're not loyal? I don't know. I might just set them up on a drip campaign in the MLS instead of searching the hot sheet 3 times a day for them, because they're not loyal. Loyalty gets you further with me. Am I going to say that to the client? Probably not that way. But you can tell my demeanor's changed a little bit. I'm a little more firm about this. I've been burned enough, and I'm tired of being burned. It hurts. So, when we do our consultation, we're actually listening to what they're saying. Hi, everyone, it's Annie. She's my neighbor too. She doesn't have her rainbow jacket on today, so I'm sad.
I can go change for you.
Please do. And do like a little fairy float by your rainbow
I'll come
jacket.
back when I wash my dishes.
Thank you. Love it. Annie is Jake Gangarelli's wife and our fantastic neighbor. So we have a little bit of fun in that back corner. So anyways, consultation. Sorry about that. So we all have moments where we ask the question and we weren't paying attention to the answer. I've done it a lot because I have a little ADHD, right? So when we are listening, we are actively asking the question that they answered with. You know what I mean? So, Kevin, what type of home are you looking for?
Sprawling ranch.
A sprawling ranch. Okay, so you say you're asking for a sprawling ranch. Why is that important? I've listened. So it's important to you. Why?
Because I want 1 floor
Okay.
and I want lots of space.
You want 1 floor and lots of space. Why is that? Why is 1 floor important to you?
I don't like stairs.
Nobody likes stairs, right? But when you start to dig, and don't use the saying, why is that important to you? Because now it just seems like the big inquisition. Nobody wants that either. Right? But just actively listen, practice those questions that you can follow up and lead with, and just get a list of them. When you can't sleep, Google these things. Right? You can keep them in your notes in your phone. But we have a buyer consultation already set up in our CRM. It is a little bit of a hot mess. We have one for the seller too, because it's not in a perfect order, but we're working on it so that I can have the sheets in my car and just fill those out, right? And then we can put everything in the file. So now I have something to reference. So if you don't have your buyer consultation sheet made up, just start doing it. It's super easy. And oh, by the way, have one for your sellers too. That sheet might be a sheet that they sign saying, okay, here's the information that we talked about on the phone. I want to make sure that you know that I was listening to your needs and wants. And that might be that same sheet that says we want an as-is contract or standard. We want this or that. Here's our showing instructions. It could be a little booklet, whatever you want. But just make sure that you're going over the information and inquiring further. So your clients, we know, they're looking for someone that hears them. Listen to their answers. We also have what we call the fun sheet. So that fun sheet says, hey, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite beverage? Wine, alcohol, coffee, flavored water, fizzy water, you know, whatever it is. What's your favorite sports team? When's your birthday? When's your wedding anniversary? I don't need your birth year. Don't need that. Why do we do that? Anyone? Why would we do that? Why would we have that form?
Well, it just makes it a more personal, the more information you have that they're, you connect with them, that you're listening, you care about them, you know, their birthday, and you're going out on a hot day and bringing the beverage that they like, if it's a particular color or whatever.
If I'm meeting a client in the morning, I'm bringing them Starbucks because I'm already driving through there probably, right? And if I know their Starbucks order, I don't even ask. I just bring it. Whether they drink it or not, I could care less. Kelly Mothershead actually had a really good idea, speaking of Starbucks. During COVID, she would do Zoom calls. And if they were morning calls, she would have Starbucks delivered to their house. That's pretty damn cool. It's just those little things. We send handwritten birthday cards, your home purchase or home sale anniversary, and we just make it simple. Can you believe it's been 1 year since you sold your house? Happy wedding anniversary. Oh, it's your kid's birthday. Pay attention to Facebook. A lot of that information is out there. Right? You can even set up a smart plan.
Which we already have done. These are all touch points.
These are all touch points. We have these already done for you. Just go to the smart plan library, make it your own, and send it. That way you don't even have to send a card, although handwritten cards I'm a firm believer in. Additional items to consider, title commitment. What do you guys do when you get a title commitment? What's supposed to happen? A title commitment is basically the premise of the title insurance policy. Right? The title insurance policy is like any other policy. The named insured, what's being covered, the property, what the coverage is and any exclusions, and then all your other additional terms. Just like any other policy, section A, B, C, and D. If you don't understand what that looks like, you need to read one. Because your client has a time frame to look at that title commitment. And if you're just sending it to them, or the title company is just sending it to them, okay, great, what do I do with this? What are they supposed to be doing with it? They need to make sure their information is correct on it, the address is correct on it, the property description is correct on it, that they understand what the exclusions are. There are normal exclusions, such as utility easements, or that sidewalk going through the driveway on a title commitment. What is not normal is when the builder builds a corner of the pool or pool deck on conservation lands. That will not be covered by title insurance. So then your buyer has to make sure that they're okay with that. And again, I would get that in writing. It is not our job to interpret the title commitment. If they have questions, they should be calling those who are issuing it. Call the title company, please. Here's their number once again. Right? They have a specific amount of time. I believe it's 5 days to review that title commitment. Same with the survey. If there are any encroachments, easement issues, things that are excluded, they have to put that concern in writing. Otherwise, they are accepting the property in its condition. If you think surveys are never wrong, again, you're gravely mistaken. So I had a client who bought vacant land on the water because it had a boat lift. Because they were paying a lot of money for their big boat in dry storage at a marina. They were going to build on that land. They already owned a house. The neighbor closed on the house when they went out of town, decided to add a deck, and that deck was in their backyard because the survey was wrong. So they had to sue. When do you think that buyer, the next door neighbor, got their survey? Closing day. Would they have known anything was wrong? No. Is this why it's important, even if the seller gives you a survey and signs an affidavit of no change to the survey, that you should still probably get your own survey? It's not a perfect science. And you should be creating checklists for every part of the transaction. Every part. So I have what we call the scary list. It's the scary list, and I give it to all of my sellers.
Give me an example of what's on that.
Oh, I'll give you some examples.
I was afraid of it.
So the scary list has on there prior to listing. This is what you need to do. It breaks down every single room in the house, outside, your garage, closets, what they should be doing, making sure they have a safe place for guns, any weapons, prescription drugs, jewelry, valuables and collectibles, money. Where's this stuff going? Because I actually showed a property about 3 months ago. And when we opened the closet in the guest bedroom, there was a gun in a holster right there. So we politely closed the closet door and let the listing agent know. But you have to let them know that. If there's little collectibles down low and someone has a kid that they're bringing in and it gets broken, don't say I didn't tell you on the scary list. It also breaks down on the scary list what happens when you need to get ready for photos. Because I don't want to waste the photographer's time by taking all of your appliances off the kitchen counter and moving your hand towel and your bathroom rugs and all your shampoo containers in the tub. It looks awful in photos. Did you clean your windows? Did you dust your light fixtures? Are you highlighting your house in the best way possible? And I'm sure that that list probably stresses out the seller. But I let them know you don't have to do a darn thing on here. But if you do everything on here, you're highlighting your house in the best way possible to gain the most money possible. That's what the list is for. It also breaks down what to do prior to an open house. One idea that I give them is take your bathroom toiletries that are on the bathroom counter, put it in a basket, take it off for showings and open houses and put it underneath. Easy. Give them some great ideas. If you can swing it, rather than you being the bad guy and saying, oh, you need to paint that ugly purple wall, pay for a consultation from the stager to go in. I feel like this is something expected of all luxury listings. But I have a feeling it's going to start happening for your residential listings too. So connect with some stagers, get some pricing, negotiate a price, right? The checklist also has it broken down what to do once your listing starts, how to manage showings, what to do once you're under contract with a buyer, and then it starts breaking it down based on how many days we have in that transaction, when they need to contact movers, when they need to be out of the property. Don't forget to schedule a plan B if you can't be out prior to closing day. You have to create that checklist. So the checklist is a very lengthy book. Kelly, I don't even know how many pages it is. Do you know?
Which checklist?
The seller one, the seller's packet for success.
Oh, it's probably 10 pages. Maybe even more.
10 pages. We have it in a nice booklet, it's stapled, got check boxes, takes you through the whole entire transaction. You should be doing this for your clients. So I'm going to go back up here. To offers and counter offers and managing the transaction. I can't emphasize this enough, guys. Managing your transaction. You have to stay on top of it. And if you feel like you're in the weeds, I don't know if anyone waited tables in college, but I sure did. And if you're in the weeds, it means that you're super busy and you've got a lot of tables and your service is a little slower. When you're starting to get in the weeds, get some leverage. Does anyone have questions about anything I went over?
An example of leverage would be
A transaction coordinator that's licensed as a real estate agent in the state of Florida. Right? A showing assistant who can be there to just open the door and smile and give information, right? Or who can help you with final walkthroughs. How many people get the question about what do we do in a final walkthrough? Are we supposed to be conducting the final walkthrough for the buyer? No, we don't do it. If the buyer is out of town, I just had that this morning. I had to drive to St. Pete Beach to meet an inspector for a final walkthrough. Even if you're on a video conference call or FaceTiming or WhatsApp or Facebook video calls, whatever you're using, you cannot be the eyes and ears or any of those sensory items for the client. Because what if you pan past a window or a corner and it's damaged or cracked or something they didn't notice and they now blame you for doing that intentionally? So I found an inspector. A lot of them won't do final walkthroughs unless you pay for a whole new inspection, but I found a guy who would do it. So he's on my list. Look, here's one of the multiple inspectors that you can use, but this guy specializes in final walkthroughs. You can call him. Right? Because now that puts us out of it. We've given them multiple options. They can have a buddy do it that lives locally or a friend. I don't know, phone a stranger. I don't care, but it's not going to be me. And then you're going to do your final walkthrough form. Did you guys know that Keller Williams has a lot of waivers that we can use? Waiver of final walkthrough, sight unseen. How many buyers do we have in this market that are putting in offers sight unseen? If you're not having that completed, you're doing yourself a huge disservice. That's one of the first things. When I have a listing or buyer packet, I'm telling you my brokerage relationship, we're talking about wire fraud. And oh, by the way, if you haven't seen the property, that's the third one. You're signing that, yep, I have not seen the property in person. So even if I FaceTime them as a showing, they weren't here physically. It's a sight unseen. All right. So there's a lot of information, a lot of forms that you guys could be utilizing. I think we have a class that we started with the addenda and disclosures and KW forms. We've had it once. And
Toni.
People in it. It's a good class.
Toni,
Yes, ma'am.
question. So where do we go to get these forms?
Well, I have it in my CRM, but you can
Toni
find
has
them.
personally created these forms, a lot of the forms that you're talking about.
Some of them, but some of them our attorneys drew up. The sight unseen form,
Yeah, some of them are in the KW form library.
Yeah, so wherever you're getting your other KW forms from, like the inspection report on the as-is contract, there's a KW one, and all they really did was they transplanted the information from the standard contract into an addendum or amendment to the contract that goes over the language of what to do if you are doing repairs or credits on an as-is contract, because there's nothing in that contract that stipulates what's to be done. So who can share aha moments with me? I know there's got to be some information that we talked about today that you guys just had no idea about. Anyone want to share? And it's okay, because clearly this is information that I had to learn myself. I didn't know that I had to have in writing why a buyer was buying or a seller was selling. Kevin,
Where do you put that information?
which information?
The why they buy and why they sell.
So you can create your own form that just says, yes, you are allowed to disclose, or no, you are not allowed to disclose why I am selling. If they say, yes, you can disclose it, here's the reason you can give. Like a good reason might be they're downsizing.
I guess I've always had it, I just never wrote it.
Yeah. Always had the conversation.
I had the conversation.
Just never got it on paper.
Yeah. Because what if it does impact their negotiation position and now they're mad?
So what's the advantage of having it in writing?
Hey, you've disclosed why I can move. They have to give you permission to disclose that. If they're giving you permission, but it's not in writing, they can always say they didn't give you permission, right? You have to give permission to disclose why someone is moving,
Could be a personal reason
Divorce.
that you're disclosing too.
right?
And
Divorce
they
might
could
be-
also disclose and say not to.
That's right. So it keeps you straight as an agent. Disclose, disclose, disclose. That's the number one reason why lawsuits happen is non-disclosure. Right? That's the 3 words in every listing presentation that I give. Disclose, disclose, disclose. Here's my script. Hey, let's talk about this form. I'm going to tell you, you must disclose, disclose, disclose. You have to disclose things that you know or should have known, which is kind of, wow, well, what should I have known? Well, you should know about the association. And if you don't know, phone a friend who works on the association or volunteers. Call the property manager, but you should know. Right? There is a box that says, I don't know. I feel like sometimes it's a cop-out. Sometimes you may not know.
Me on your
On the disclosure form, seller's property disclosure. There's yes, no, and I don't know. And oh, by the way, why don't they have an NA box for like
Yeah.
the dock in working order? I don't, or the seawall. I don't know. I don't know water. We don't have one. Right? So disclose, disclose, disclose. Disclose what you do know or should have known. Because if you had a small leak under your kitchen sink and you had a plumber come fix it, the neighbor will make it sound like your house flooded. I just had one, a listing we closed yesterday, brand new roof put on, and during the open house, someone said, yeah, the neighbors sent me over, and they said it's shingle over shingle. I said, really? We actually did it through the Keller Offers Ready to Sell program. So I knew it wasn't shingle over shingle. I had to bite my tongue because I wanted to get a little sassy and tell them their neighbor was stupid. But I didn't. But I just said, well, I would like to know where they got that information from, but what I can tell you for sure is that it is not shingle over shingle. The shingles were removed. Here's the roofer's information if you would like to confirm that, or you can go on property records because they will know that. Right? So, disclose, disclose, disclose. Okay. And put that in writing. Hey, I sent you the disclosure form. Disclose, disclose, disclose. Things you should have known, things you do know, everything. any questions at all?
I do have a question. I have a listing coming. The owner cannot be present. It's in a special place. And the father is the one who has all the POA. He doesn't know a lot of things about the house.
I would probably have, if there's a power of attorney. Yes. And the person who owns it is of sound mind, I would have that person answer the questions to the father who's signing on behalf of them and make sure when they're signing it says POA, I think you have to write it all out, power of attorney for blank, blank, blank. Yeah, but disclose. Unless it's truly an estate and they have not lived there, then
Okay,
it's
that
not
means-
occupancy.
I'm sorry. In that case, because I don't have access to green papers or anything, the father will have to don't fill out the seller disclosure just to non-occupy? Or how do we go in that case?
I think what I would probably do is contact the attorney who wrote the power of attorney and find out what that relationship is or why there's a power of attorney. Because that person, they know information about it. Okay, here's a soapbox item. Investors, I'm so sorry you didn't live in the property, but you know about it.
You can tell her why. I'm sorry.
You can disclose that.
Oh, they use,
About the buyer, the seller.
they use in that special place.
With Marcus.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, I can, the
Well,
social
don't
worker
they-
is the one who did the power of attorney.
Don't you get a phone friend?
No.
I mean, you can write to that, whatever it is, I would try to get as much disclosure information as I can. And they've got to have the ability to communicate with the outside world. Your letter, hey, here's a disclosure form.
Maybe I will
Your
mail it
son.
to him. I got the information to him fill it up in there. Of the social work. Okay.
I mean, again, just because it's covering you too.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if you sign the form, if there's a lawsuit happening, they're calling you. You're being dragged into it because they're looking for the deepest pockets.
And that's why I said I cannot write a contract until we don't have everything ready to go.
Yeah, and oh, by the way, before you list a condo or homeowner association property, get all the documents ahead of time. If you have a tenant in there, get your tenant estoppel ahead of time, please. Makes me crazy in this market. And oh, by the way, the property, huh?
Put them in MLS.
Yeah, put it in the MLS. Oh, which is gonna get me on another soapbox real quick here, sorry. Okay, disclosures, MLS, what did I say before that? Rewind. Rewind. Condo docs, HOA docs, and estoppels. I was gonna go somewhere else and I forgot. Yeah, I mean,
Rewind's broke.
the thing is, guys, Kelly and I will complain about things all the time on the other side of the transaction. Again, we're not perfect at all. We have our thing, we're human, I get it. But there are some really dumb things that we see. Really dumb. Right? If you're not gonna call agents back on the other side when you have a multiple offer situation, let them know. I won't be able to call you back. Set the expectation. That's all we're asking. Right? Questions? All set? All right, thanks for attending, guys, girls, ladies, men.
Appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the great information. We have a lot of work to do.